Coming to you all the way from Norfolk, Virginia, Go On Productions, earprov.com, the Push Comedy Theater, and Nerds of Comedy presents The Funny Pages.
Welcome to the Funny Pages. I am your host, Sean Devereux. Welcome to the talk show about comic books. We are so glad to be coming to you tonight. And we have a very special guest joining him. He is a really great improviser and comedian. You may know him from Lemon Pepper and Saison, a sketch comedy group, an improv group from the Push Comedy Theater, although they have been all over the place doing festivals and stuff, or at least pre-COVID. Welcome, Jordan Burton.
Hello.
So here on the Funny Pages, each week we tackle either a specific hero or story arc or just comic book series. And this week we are tackling, I haven't even been drinking yet, tackling the Black Panther. So I put out a kind of a call to all my friends who are comic book fans to ask what their favorite hero was or what they would like to talk about if there was a talk show about comic books. And Jordan, you came back with the Black Panther. Why the Black Panther? Out of all the heroes, what is special to you about Black Panther?
Well, I was familiar with Marvel, of course, as a child, to the extent of the average child. I read comic books when I was little, but the comic books I read when I was little was more so Archie comics, like Sonic the Hedgehog type of stuff. The actual first superhero comic book I sat down and read was the Black Panther, because I was like, I knew he existed, but I was just like, watching the Avengers in the MCU back when it was up and coming, like, early 00s, watching, the first Iron Man and the first Hulk movies, I was like, I really want to learn more about this Black superhero. So I watched, there was like a BET cartoon special that was like 6 episodes. And then after that, I decided to go to Barnes and Noble and pick up like a book series about Black Panther, which was the one that I reached out to you about, the Man Without Fear.
Okay. I am a lot like you with you. I've been reading comic books since I was a kid. I'm older than dirt. So for me, that's been the early 80s. And the Black Panther was always a hero that I was... I'm sorry, I got a little feedback real sick. So the Black Panther was a hero that I've known since I was a kid, or familiar with, but I never really read any of his comic books, mainly because there weren't a lot of Black Panther comic books going around back then. He would like show up in the Avenger, or he was an Avenger, or show up in Fantastic Four. He would show up here and there, but never enough for me to really grab hold of him. So when you suggested Black Panther, I was really kind of excited because this is a hero that I don't know a lot about. So before we dive into the Man Without Fear arc, because I have a lot of things to say about that and the Christopher Priest arc, just a really quick overview. Black Panther, let me pull up my notes real fast. He showed up in 1966 as in the Fantastic Four comic book. Then in 1968, he joined the Avengers, but he didn't get his own comic book until I believe it was 1973. He was the lead hero in a book called Jungle Comics, or Jungle Action, I think it was the name. And from what I've been able to read, that series was kind of like one of the beginnings of like the first kind of serialized stories. The series ran from like issue 6 to issue 24, and it told two complete stories. They said that if you had you could collect those, and it would be like the first ever graphic novel. Then he reappeared in 1977 by one of his creators. Jack Kirby wrote and drew a Black Panther comic book. But then he disappeared again and didn't show up until 1988 when he had like a 4-issue limited series, which I believe I have 1 or 2 of those issues, but I don't really remember anything about that particular 4-issue limited series. So that was my extension of knowledge of the Black Panther. So let's talk about The Man Without Fear.
Let's talk about this. And actually, funny story, Sean, real quick before. So right here on this bookshelf, I have a part of The Man Without Fear, and I believe this is the book that I reached out to you. What I did not realize, because I went to Barnes & Noble and said, can you find me a comic book on the Black Panther? I just want to read about it. And the clerk handed me this. What the clerk handed me was an incomplete story arc. So when you sent me the complete story arc and I was reading through it, I was just like, oh my God, so much more of this book makes sense to me. So I was actually reading part of the arc for the first time. So there was a couple issues before that was in the book and a couple of issues after in that book. But so to kind of just dive right into it, you know, when you first look at the overview of Black Panther on Wikipedia, it's like, oh, this is cool. He's African royalty. His superheroes are passed down through tradition. This is so cool. Like, I'm gonna just read about this, this black man in a cat suit just being baller and lavish and extravagant. And then I cracked open The Man Without Fear and I was like, oh. Okay, with that. So the arc, it kind of starts off with like, he just wants to run around being a vigilante in what's essentially the hood of the Marvel comic universe.
Hell's Kitchen, New York, which is normally Daredevil's turf, but Daredevil is taking some time off or whatever and kind of taps Black Panther to look over his neighborhood while he's gone.
And then, like, the funny thing about it was, like, you know, they kind of set up with parallel. Like, the Daredevil had to go find himself after he got into some not so nice things with, you know, a crime organization he was trying to overthrow. And then Black Panther just got finished with a war with Dr. Doom in Wakanda, and their resources were kind of eviscerated. So he was just like, yeah, I'm kind of done with this. Instead of staying in Wakanda and helping my people rebuild, I'm gonna go help these people over in America real quick. Like, I was like, this was okay. That was an interesting choice. However,
it's almost like he's going to find himself.
Yeah, and I was just like, I get that, but I was like, you can't find yourself after you rebuild your country. You know, for me. However, there were like several questions that I did have while reading through the story arc, but the comic book actually did a good job of addressing each question that was coming up, like literally like a few pages after I was having the question. For example, like what I just said, like, so you left your country right after a war that took all of it. And, you know, he actually left it in his sister's hands and they were in good hands with rebuilding and everything. So he did set that up in place, you know, for Wakanda to be good on its own without him before he left.
Mm-hmm. And then, keep on going. Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that not only does he kind of leave his country behind, but he like really kind of strips down to his bare bones. He tries to get rid of like anything technological with his suit. Normally his suit has like vibranium in it and can do all sorts of things. But he's almost like more Batman than anything else in this story arc.
He was giving me a very broke Batman without the billions. However, he's, you know, the same master tactician, you know, just going out and put on a suit and I'm gonna fight crime. And actually, it did remind me, The Man Without Fear did remind me a lot about Batman, how like there's just a city that's known for crime and these random supervillains just keep popping up one after the other.
And the artwork, it kind of so the artist who draws this, it's written by David Liss, he was a novelist who got kind of pulled into the comic books world, but the artist for most of the arc is Francisco Francavilla. I'm completely butchering his name, but he's an Italian artist, but has a very kind of like retro, very like noir type feel to it. And there's just a lot of scenes with Black Panther just beating the crap, regular henchmen dudes. There was a shot of them holding a guy off of a building. And even the first villain in this arc, he has superpowers, but is basically just a gangster. He's like Russian mob or something like that.
Yeah, he was like he grew up poor in like Romania, and then like he was running. And I'm gonna say like each and every supervillain in this was a mess. But like that's what I was saying. Like I did kind of get into it by the end of the arc, but when I first kind of cracked this open and saw that, I was like, okay, so you broke, you just beating up common criminals and thugs on the street. This is not what I want to see for a Black African king of a thriving nation. I was like, does this city not have police officers? Which we gonna talk about police officers in that later arc, because that American Panther story was a hot mess. But yeah, but I mean, I did eventually get into it, and it was just like, okay, so we do get to see a little bit of the Black Panther as a person beyond, just being that extravagant king of like one of the most advanced nations of the world. One of my criticisms.
Although one of the things is that I'm not sure I liked him beyond the king. He's very, very smug. There's a couple times when like Luke Cage offers him some help, Spider-Man offers him some help, and he's kind of I wouldn't say a dick, but he's very like, no, I can do this on my own, even though like things are going to hell in a handbasket all around him. Even his wife. So at this point in time, he's married to Storm from the X-Men, and she offers to help him when he's battling Kraven the Hunter, and he's like, no, I can do this on my own. When there's times when he clearly can't do it on his own. Like, he would have been saved so much time and effort and property damage and probably even life if he had just said, oh yeah, I could use a little hand if you don't mind.
That is
so it's just
those are my sentiments exactly. Where I was about to say my criticisms about his character, when you do strip away all the things that just inherently make him cool, I was just like, he's just like, I don't need help with Luke Cage. He said to Spider-Man. He said it to his wife, and we, if you read comic books, you know that marriage was a hot, contrived, misogynistic mess. I was not a fan of the way that Black Panther treated Storm in the comic books. So like, it's just always been something I've kept in mind when I read about it. I did, because a lot of people were saying, bring Storm into the MCU and incorporate her into the Black Panther, story arc. And I was just like, well, if they do that, they're gonna have to revise some stuff. But I was like, the Black Panther movie that they released, they did do some revisions to, the setup of Wakanda and T'Challa's character to, make it more, I guess I want to say like politically correct, or make it more palatable, because I was like, T'Challa in the comic books, he's not that palatable of a person, because I was just like, and going in, I was like, I'm gonna love this man and everything that he's doing. And when I would just read some of his, it was like, your reasoning doesn't make any sense. Where like what you said, like property damage, people dying, I was like, didn't you come to Hell's Kitchen to get away from it? Because you were like, there was a lot of casualties in Wakanda and a lot of property damage. But I'm like, you're doing the same thing in Hell's Kitchen, New York. Like it just wasn't making sense to me.
What's also weird is that there is a subplot through the first story arc where there is a serial killer going around killing people who have been accused or suspected of domestic abuse, domestic abusers. And eventually it's revealed, spoilers, but again, this is like a 10-year-old comic book, so fine. It's revealed that it's actually one of his neighbors. He's living in this kind of like rundown tenement in Hell's Kitchen. One of his neighbors who's a social worker, and through her social work, she's tracking down people who, are abusing their wives or their children or whatever, and killing them. And he's like, he is trying to turn her in, but at the same time, he's holding guys off the edges of buildings. At one time, a couple times he threatens to kill bad guys if they don't surrender. So it was this weird, almost double standard. Like, I know heroes are very killing, but a lot of times it looked like Black Panther would have been willing to kill somebody if he had to cross that line, but they would surrender or give up before that happens.
Especially when it came to like his country, because there was towards the end, Kingpin was trying to take over the rest of Wakanda's resources, and he got crazy. Like, I very much think that he would have killed over protecting his country, but that's something I was going to point out, because her name is Iris, I want to say. Yeah, her name is
Iris. Yes.
The social worker. And I was like, she said it right before I did. So I said, this comic book addresses things as soon as they pop into my head. She was like, okay, you're trying to turn me into the police, but like, who's to say when breaking the law is right or wrong? Because actually him being in Hell's Kitchen was actually illegal, because his lawyer hooked up a whole ass fake identity for this man. Mm-hmm. And hooked up a fake identity so he wouldn't be seen as the king. He's running around beating up bad guys, beating the brakes off of people. Like, actually in itself, vigilante justice is actually illegal, but there's some nuance and implications there as well. So I'm just like, you're just right now you're being all just like, well, we got to follow the law and stuff like that. Oh, actually, right after that, Storm was hanging that white professor lady over her abomination, saying, okay, well, I could just drop you and have you be eaten by this thing. So it's just like, it's a little inconsistent for me.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. So, now, and I do love the artwork. So there is a woman who's in these like kind of genetic experiments, and she makes like a half piranha, half boy, piranha boy, which there's some really kind of cool scenes of this piranha boy. I'm very intrigued about whatever happened to Piranha Boy. I think Kraven the Hunter takes it to the Savage Land or something like that. But I just like these weird kind of creatures that this scientist made. But you're right. Storm at one point in time is holding this scientist over this piranha creature, pretty much threatening to drop her and have her be eaten.
And she also committed arson, because at the end there was a fire, but it was like contained to only this room, and we don't know how the fire was only contained to this room. So it's heavily, they didn't say she did it, but it's heavily implied that she used her powers to only set that basement lab on fire. So I'm like, girl, you just sat up here and committed arson. It's just very much. So if it's either you're gonna believe in that vigilante justice or you're not gonna believe in that vigilante justice. But I think she was even saying, like, I want to say Iris did say something along the lines, I could be wrong here, that I guess it's okay for superpowered individuals to do this, but not for regular people.
I think you're 100% correct. There was this weird kind of double standard that went through this whole thing that I just really didn't get, or I don't know. It's one of those things, I guess, because he made such a big deal out of it, because at least with Batman, Batman works with the police and whatnot. You can kind of see it with Batman, but here he's like purposely shunning the Avengers. He is completely working outside of the law. I don't know why. Normally this type of thing doesn't stick out for me in comic books, but for this arc, it really did for some reason.
And it was just like, I just always, let's go back to Kraven this man is literally falling to his death. He is full of poison from Kraven's dart. He's about to fall off the bridge. And then Storm, who was teleported in from Wakanda. Or San Francisco, wherever she was at. And she was teleported in and she saved them. And the first thing he was like is, why are you here? You about to blow my cover. And then she's like, well, I mean, you could say thank you. And that was actually recurring throughout, because when Spider-Man came in, like, Spider-Man was like, you could have said thank you. But he just gets very like, it is just very machismo to me. Like, I should have done this on my own. And he just always had those machismo values with that marriage with Storm, where it was like, but I mean, also Storm, for me, she kind of got bad taste in men, because I'm like right after that annulment was final, she started messing with Wolverine. So I was just like, she don't really got, the best taste in men anyway. But I was like, he like, Storm was revered as a literal goddess in Egypt, and you telling her she needs to stand down and stay out of your business and stay out of your way. Mm-hmm. The marriage, for me, it was just never my thing. I was never here for it.
Like I said, I wasn't reading, following comics too closely at this point in time, or if I was definitely more DC. 2011, this is right when like the new 52 was coming into vogue with DC, which is where I kind of jumped back into comics after a little break. But I do remember reading about the marriage of Black Panther and Storm, and it again, not having read the comic books, I'm speaking maybe a little bit out of turn with this, but it definitely seemed, oh, let's take, one of the few black superheroines we have and one of the few black superheroes we have and just put them together as, a marriage of convenience almost.
That was 100% what that was. I was, and I mean, you saw it in their values and how Black Panther is very much I want to work alone, where Storm was she came from a team. So it was like if I felt like if they were to like actually date and sit down and compare values, they would just not match up. So it was kind of weird that they actually ended up getting married. But I want to say, and I'm not sure if this is comic book canon, but when I watched it was like BET ran like a 6-episode miniseries. Part of it was that like T'Challa and Aurora Monroe, they knew each other when they were kids, because part of his training was like he was supposed to walk from one end of Africa to the other end. And so when he went to the end of Africa, Egypt, which I believe is at the tip top of Africa, like she was in trouble, like she was about to get mugged or something, and then like they just always kept in contact from childhood. I want to say, I'm not sure if that's comic book canon or just for that miniseries, but so I guess it was probably like a childhood thing. So when you do meet people from childhood, sometimes you don't look at them closely. As say if I were to meet somebody tomorrow and start dating them, so that's very well possible that could have happened. But like I do agree with you, like I feel like that Marvel was kind of like, we have this black superhero and this black superhero, let's just have them get married. And I was like, that their values just as two superheroes just never really aligned or matched up for me.
Now let's switch gears. Well, first, before we do that, if you guys want to call in or if you have comments, Matt has been showing us some of the comments that you guys have been leaving. Thank you very much. Will Harris and Frank Holman, Ariel Mitchell, Jamarcus Q. Perry. Thank you guys for writing in. Keep on writing your comments. But if you want to call in and you want to talk Black Panther, Matt will put the phone number up in, it's right above my head. Look at that. Feel free to call in and talk Black Panther, because right now we're going to switch gears. And so I gave you a series to read because normally whenever anybody mentions Black Panther, one of the first things people talk about is the run that Christopher Priest did in 1998. And it was it was huge at the time because it was the first time a black man was ever writing Black Panther. Up at this point, it had always been white guys writing it. And a lot of the things that you see in the Black Panther movie characters come from Christopher Priest's run on the character. So I gave you the first couple issues. I think I read the first 5 issues of what is supposed to be this acclaimed run on Black Panther. What did you think?
I'm gonna be real with you, Sean. It was kind of a rough read for me when I was going through it. Like, at least like when I was reading The Man Without Fear, I was like, this story is comprehensive. I kind of want to know what's happening next. With this, I kind of had to force myself to kind of turn the pages, and eventually I just kind of started to see the artwork so I could piece the story together myself. But like the first mistake I feel like with this run was they're explaining Black Panther through the eyes of a white man.
Yes, which is really, really weird. Like, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just like, okay, when I want to read about Black Panther, I want to read about Black Panther. So, like, The Man Without Fear, it was told through T'Challa's point of view, but this is told from like some random embassy worker, and he's explaining things to his wife or his girlfriend at the time, and then he even like makes remarks which would not fly in 2021, but he was just like, what, I said he's Black, I'm allowed to say what things are, and people get too wrapped up these days, like basically just doing a whole spiel about like, why does everything have to be so PC these days, which in 1998 seems, you know, very forward and revolutionary. I feel like we had a whole movement of that between late 90s and like mid early 2000s, where like we always had that, because it was even in comedy where people were like, why does everything have to be so PC today? So it works for the context of 1998, but that would not fly in 2020. And
so in reading it, so they want the character is kind of modeled after a cross between Chandler from Friends and Michael J. Fox. And the reason why he's in the book is because they didn't think a white audience would read the book if there wasn't a white character to identify with, which we're looking at it through the eyes of 2021, which obviously, you know, you look at the box office that the Black Panther movie did. I mean, that is not the case. I think, you know, a lot of people, you know, would go see a Black Panther or any movie with, you know, a Black lead character. I don't think you need a white person to be the eyes of the audience at this day and age. But again, even in 1998, I don't think you really needed that, because after reading that arc, I have no idea who Black Panther is. Like, there's no connection I have to the character, because it's all through this guy Everett Ross's point of view.
Yeah, and it was just like, and it was just, for me, it was kind of all over the place, because it was kind of going to his personal life, and then I don't, if I'm pronouncing this right, Marvel Comic Universe Satan, Mephisto, I believe that's how you pronounce it.
Mephisto, yes.
Mephisto was there, and then they had the Fantastic Four in here, so I was just like, this is supposed to be about Black Panther, but it's just very cacophonous with all these extra characters thrown in. It kind of reminds me of like, I don't know if you've ever seen Orange is the New Black, where it's like all these side characters kind of overshadowing who's supposed to be the main character.
It's true, and it's weird because he has a lot of cool ideas that I would much rather see explored than watching page after page of this guy. And everything is kind of told in flashback and in kind of like Pulp Fiction, like completely out of order. He's basically retelling the story about when he met Black Panther and when this happened and this happened to his girlfriend. So you're seeing everything in flashback. But again, so like a lot of kind of cool things that are you later see in the movie. So it was like the first appearance of was it Okoye and Nakia? Oh, wait.
We got a call.
Yeah, let's bring it in. Hello, welcome to the Funny Pages.
Hello?
Somebody else?
Hello?
Oh, hello. Yeah, welcome.
Hello, welcome to the Funny Pages. Oh.
This sounds like my friend Jamarcus.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Jamarcus. What's up?
Nothing much. Listening to y'all talk about some tales. That's all.
This is we performed together at the Dinner Detective. He also just did the diversity jam with us. So like he's familiar
awesome.
with the theater. Yeah.
So what do you have to say about Black Panther?
Oh well, I'm just gonna pick up what we're just talking about. I actually, since I own the complete collection, Volume 1, with this story from the agent's perspective on T'Challa's actions and whereabouts and terrorism and whatnot, I was saying I thought it was like, so picking that up after years of hearing about Black Panther and then turning from this particular story, Volume 1, I thought it was kind of neat to see this guy who's clearly nowhere near the same background tell a story of a king doing what he do, but then getting the chance to see what's actually happening and how he carries himself and handles business and the door lies and his security guards and how they carry themselves in the street. I was like a really great tale. And if you get through all 3 volumes, then you can see like what's really going on behind the scenes and why this agent played a bigger role later on. I was like, oh, this is great.
So you're saying we should stick with it?
Right. So because it's volume 1, but as you get through, when the minor characters start building up more development, so he's gonna get a bigger role. The Dora Milaje role kind of shifts a different role, and then you see T'Challa also, and then pick himself back up. You know, that whole rise and fall of a hero type thing.
Now, I will say, from what I've kind of like read up on, this is actually like the first time where T'Challa is portrayed as a king as opposed to a superhero, and the first time that they really kind of dug into Wakanda as a nation and the whole how it works on the global scale and the various political machinations and stuff like that. So it's the first time you see T'Challa acting like a king as opposed to some of his earlier appearances, which is kind of cool. And I do love his entourage that he travels with. There is a pretty kind of funny panel when the agent goes to pick him up at the airport, and he has his little convertible, not knowing that T'Challa is going to show up with an entourage of about 30 people.
Facts, right? And I think that was also, I mean, that kind of also plays a game because it's a little bit slower to read compared to other comic books. But I enjoyed seeing this guy who walks on this royal high glass. People would basically lay themselves out on him, and he's walking the streets like any regular Joe. Please don't get close to him. Like, whatever you do, don't touch this dude, man.
You know what, I will say this as a positive aspect. I did like the way the Dora Milaje, I like the way that they were portrayed. Not necessarily the implications of, they're being trained to be, Black Panther's potential wives or anything like that. But like, I just like what they did retain, and this is even in the movie, that they were just strong women. That is just like they, the dresses were cute, the heels were cute, the makeup, the face beat for me. I just like that they were just like strong, powerful women. I mean, despite the little fact that they was being, raised to be potential brides. But other than that, like I did like the portrayal of the Dora Milaje.
I like that. I also like the Dogs of War, which is, I guess, like the Wakandan secret police that have sort of kind of been exiled.
The
when
wolf.
T'Challa takes power. The White Wolf. Yeah.
That's what, because that was also in the Man of Fear, which I did not know about that, and I wonder why. We haven't really seen any of the story in the mainstream, because it's very much it's very comparable to, like, if the story of like Loki and Thor, where and it's just I would actually like to see a little bit more of this arc, like the story arc kind of, bought up a little bit later in the mainstream, where I didn't know that there was, like, T'Challa had an adopted older brother who was white.
That's probably why you might not hear about it. Like that, I mean, that alone, it gets a little, in today's age, you're going to get some pushback on that immediately.
I think that, though, it would make an interesting story arc, though. And I was just like, unfortunately, Chadwick Boseman is no longer living. But, like, I think that it would be kind of cool to kind of see, like, we haven't heard anything about him, but, like, if, he were to, come out and be like, so I was kind of put in the background. Because the thing is, as a child, he didn't realize that he was different. But of course, he's not of Wakandan blood. He's white. you know, he was raised to feel like he's never going to measure up to the Wakandan throne. And honestly, I do agree that him sitting on the Wakandan throne is not quite right. But, you know, in his eyes, when he's growing up, he thinks he's just as entitled as T'Challa to inherit the throne. And so it definitely,
like
you know, it definitely would affect his psyche, you know, being seen as second best. And then especially like you know, just because he probably heard his whole life, one, you're adopted, and two, you're not Black, go over there in the corner. So it's just like, for me, it's like he had no choice but to grow up a little corrupted. I do think that, and then also I do feel like it could kind of be tied into like the story and the debate about like appropriation and stuff like that.
Now, what are you guys' thoughts? I mean, granted, we're mostly talking comic books, but I also wouldn't mind touching on the movie. Where would you like to see the movies go from here, especially since, you know, we don't have Chadwick Boseman anymore?
I think that if they took and I would like to hear what you have to say too, Jamarcus, but I think it would be interesting. I do believe there were talks about Shuri taking over the throne, but I feel like it would just be a gag, or, you know, a shock to the audience if, you know, she's about to try and take the throne and then this random white man comes from out the woodwork and like, wait, that's my throne.
Yeah, that would be kind of a swerve for the audience.
That would be, I think that would, I would just love to hear the reactions in the movie theater if we're able to see, you know, be a movie theater at that point. But
right, that would be a riot, more like, well, yeah, okay. But I with you.
Now there is precedent. There other people have taken up the mantle of the Black Panther. There's been a couple times where he's relinquished it. Obviously, at one point in time, Shuri becomes the Black Panther, but then I know there's a couple other times when other guys have taken up the mantle as well. So, I mean, the precedent is there for somebody else to take it. It's just, who is that person going to be, and will the audience go for it?
So, Jamarcus, what would you like to see from
the safest, right? And to me, I think it would be just passing it on to his sister if you follow that Dr. Doom, but then you're pushing the Marvel MCU a little bit further ahead than what they planned. But if you went along that line where he got hurt that time and then he had to pass it on to, you know, the sister, took over for a bit, and going down that line, I think it'd be at least you can still follow the comic book story and you can give yourself a little breathing room to then if you want to edge out an unknown realm, you get that time to do so.
I agree. I mean, they are talking about the Fantastic Four pretty hard, so they could maybe delay, you know, establish the FF first and then do Black Panther 2.
There has not been a good Fantastic Four movie that I have seen, but that's another topic for another day.
Right. I tell you what, though, I tell you something super interesting. But Doctor Strange movie in the alternate realities, now they dig that path and went to find another king from another location to maybe fill in for a temporary status. Then, of course, you still got that possibility too in the alternate realities.
That is true. Or even, you know, with time travel, I mean, they could go back to the, if they wanted to go back to the 90s and take T'Challa's father from the 90s and bring him to present day to be Black Panther. Because who was the actor who played him? Like I said, I just rewatched the movie and I recognize the actor who played him in like the flashback scenes when it was in the 90s when they were in America.
I can tell you.
Let's see.
Listen, I can tell you either.
Now mine is drawing a blank at the moment, but again, that is something they could do. Now, Jamarcus, have you read any of the other Black Panther story arcs? Is there anything that you could recommend that we check out?
Yeah, reality ought to go to the more recent stories compared to those older ones. The older ones were cool, but he had Black Panther, a nation under my feet. This might be called A Nation Under My Feet. I think it was 2016. Black Panther. It brings it more up to a more modern time. You see the normalized kind of take hold of their own individualities and their backstory and their future path. They're no longer servants underneath him necessarily. So that's pretty good because Jordan mentioned that earlier. T'Challa kind of stepped down from being he's not a dick to monarchy. It's shunned upon in the modern day age. You see him trying to branch out from that. Definitely go look at that 2017 story of Black Panther, A New Nation, and I think everybody will enjoy that a lot.
You know what? I do like that. Is it okay if I go back to the Man of Steel really quick? Because there was a couple
please do. Yeah.
Reading that in 2020 was just so relevant for me, especially with that American Panther arc and I was just like, this just looks like a giant allegory for Donald Trump to me. Like if I were to read it and not known that it was written 10 years ago, I would think that it was making fun of Donald Trump, because it's just like this man who is just depicted as a, quote unquote loser at the time. He doesn't really have much to show for himself. And then he just like, well, it's not my fault I don't have anything to show for myself. It's those foreigners, it's those immigrants. And then like literally the hate manifests a spirit to possess his body. And then like he gets the superpower to influence everybody with like their negative vibes and bad, and so he brings that out of people. And so he brings the racism out of people everywhere, they go, and they're just like, it's not, it can't possibly be my fault. I'm a good white American. It has to be, these foreigners. It has to be those Asians or those African people. Or so they were just like, it was very much America is for Americans to me. And then another layer that they had to it was that like the main person that he had fighting for him, the American Panther, was a former police officer. And it was very easy for him to influence police officers with those feelings of hate, which I was reading. I said, ooh, it's getting a little touchy.
Getting a little home, huh?
So I was just like, this, that whole story arc to me was very relevant in 2020. And literally right after that story arc, there was just this random virus going around all of New York that was turning people into spiders. So I was just like, man, like I really feel like this was some foreshadowing going on here. We got an unknown virus causing weird effects going around people, and we have, just this random person getting enough power to influence masses of people to be racist.
It's true that there is. I didn't think about it until you had brought it up when the other night when you had said that there were so many parallels to this day and age, and as soon as you said it, it was like all these little synapses started firing in my head. It's like, oh my God, you're right.
And so I was like, that was another thing that was kind of like, I didn't understand that. And this is what Storm had brought up, because he was just like, I'm here in Hell's Kitchen and I'm trying to, reserve my identity, but he still put on a Black Panther suit. So it was just like, I don't understand why. And I was like, maybe he's, Black Panther is just not as well known as, the other American superheroes. But I was like, Jamarcus, have you read The Man Without Fear arc, or did you just read the other one?
No, I have that one too. That was The Man Without Fear.
Okay, like I don't know. What did you think about that? Like, and what did you think about like T'Challa's character when you remove, the superpowers and him being a king, and all that lavish stuff that he grew up with?
For when I was reading it, my interpretation of it was he intentionally went out and left all that behind because some hardship happened after the war with Dr. Doom and whatnot. So I knew that he was he's going through something, and he's trying to rebuild. He's trying to rebuild. He was damaged internally, emotionally, and he's trying to rebuild and recover. So I get that. So he went to like the dirtiest part of the New York you can possibly find. He's looking for Daredevil, and he's trying to do things literally hardest way possible, more of a redemption tour, if that's what you call it. a redemption. He's made a deal for himself to prove to himself that he is everything that he's been told he was from his birth. And so I liked how they had him do it. We knew that he was good at everything, but without his extra materials, you see him get beat up. You see him bleed. You see him not be able to save everybody he wants to save. And so I thought that was all good. Even the villain even had a interesting tale, because he wasn't necessarily like the I want to take over the world and destroy people type of villain, but he was a villain nonetheless who had a mission to get things done. And them two against each other. One person who came from everything, now has nothing, and one dude who came from nothing and has money and influence in New York, going head to head. So that was pretty.
And actually, that was the case with the first villain. I want to say his name was Vladimir, and then
Vlad the Impaler.
Yes, Vlad the Impaler, and then that was also the case with kind of Kingpin. They weren't like, I want to take over the world, I want to conquer the universe. They were literally just, no, I just want money if I get it legally or illegally. That's pretty much what a lot of criminals are like. So they were more so. It was more so, and with comic books, which I think was interesting, is that there were some elements of fantasy. But like the overarching story was kind of taking us out of fantasy and kind of giving us more parallels with reality, like with the racism and immigration, with the there's people that aren't necessarily looking after disenfranchised homes. The social worker brought up a great point. There's not enough, and social workers are overworked because there's not enough social workers to properly look over all the caseloads. So there's tons of domestic abuse that goes unchecked, or people don't see it. That is a very real issue. When we're talking about and so the issues of these rich criminals, they do try to move into poor neighborhoods and make moves on poor neighborhoods because they're like, well, nobody really is going to look over here because it's kind of poor. They don't have the resources to stop me. Say that if I went to like a richer neighborhood. So it had a lot of very real things. So it wasn't really like encapsulating you in fantasy like some other comic books do. It was kind of bringing some reality like up into your face.
I think so too. I think the artwork helps with that a lot. I mean, on the one hand, it's a little cartoony with that kind of retro feel, but it also gave it kind of a gritty kind of like the earth type of feel. Like I said, a very kind of like noirish type of feel that to me kind of grounded it and made it seem like you said, that this is like, real world stuff as opposed to like this very kind of lofty, like superhero fantasy type stuff.
That, definitely. I like that. Oh, another thing that we were talking about, like we brought this up in the beginning, and Jamarcus, you can comment on this as well. But another question that I had was, I was like, he seems to have issues with everybody helping him except for the waitress that worked for him. Sophia, like every time Sophia, Sophia didn't even ask to help. He told her, hey, I need you to help me with this. So it was kind of like, part of me was like, so what's the difference between her and, these other people? And I think the difference is she didn't have any superpowers just like him.
Mm-hmm. That, and I think she was like from Croatia or something like that. She came from
Serbia,
kind of like, a war-torn country. And I guess, especially maybe coming off the Doctor Doom arc, where, he's coming out of war. Maybe that's something that kind of connected with him or spoke to him. I did like the Sophia character.
I did. I liked her a lot too, because I do think that I do think she provided a nice compliment to Black Panther. And then also another thing that I do want to point out with Sophia is that when he did finally gather a team and went to the Avengers and got Avengers, and I don't know if this is intentional or unintentional, but he just took 2 other Black Avengers to help him out. He took
Black Panther, right?
He took
what I was saying about him just being a redemption tour for himself. So he really didn't want help from Luke, from Storm, and the other well-known superheroes, and but so that's why he didn't get that help from them when he goes and forms his own team. if y'all ever read, he has a series called The Crew, and Crew is a group of all superheroes, Falcon, Cage, Manny Fold, I'm missing somebody, Storm tips in every once in a while, and this is, and that's like his most trusted people. So yeah. Monica, she showed up there later. But yeah, and that's his team. That's literally his trusted cohorts of all the team. But they don't get a series printed. I think if y'all want to go check that out.
I think I remember seeing something about that. Is Cloak also on that team?
Oh, from Cloak and Dagger?
Yeah, Cloak from Cloak and Dagger, because I remember it was an all-black superhero team and they have a comic book arc.
Yeah, I think
can't remember.
Cloak was there with Manifold, who does the transportation now. So, so they Cloak as much.
Okay. Yeah, that was that, you know, I do think that's an interesting read. I am going to I do appreciate you, Jamarcus, letting me know that the comic book does pick back up. I will devote some more time into that Christopher Priest story arc, because it did start off slow and I was kind of off put by it at the beginning. But hearing that it does pick back up, I will reread. And
I will continue on with it as well. It's and very, very wordy. By today's standards, like, you know, you can breeze through a comic book fairly easy, but like I said, that one was pretty dense. It was kind of rough to get through.
I'll admit it is a little slow, but the story, if you can get through, you're like, so what happens next? Like you gotta.
Like I said, it's one of those weird things. Like everybody you talk to just raves about the Christopher Priest arc on Black Panther. So I was so excited to finally be able to read it. And after the first 5 issues, I was like, I'm not getting it.
And I feel like I might be the only person on earth that is sharing your sentiments. And I feel like if this makes us round around the comic book community, we are going to get dragged for it. So
yeah, exactly. So I will. I'm going to stick with it. Yeah, I don't want to lose my comic book cred.
So you know what? I'm gonna keep reading it, y'all. If y'all are reading this at home, don't drag me yet. Give me a chance to finish it and change my opinion if I need to.
All right. So as we are wrapping up with this show, any other books out there that you would like to recommend to people?
Yes. So as I said, I'm not a big like Marvel comic book reader or superhero comic book reader, to be honest. So that's probably another thing they're gonna drag me on. He don't even read Marvel comic books. He talking about one of the greatest story arcs of all time. But I really do like, it is an Archie comic. It is a Sonic the Hedgehog and Mega Man crossover, and I really like it so much. So if you ever get your hands on that, you can probably, you know, find a copy of it online fairly easy. I want to say it came out in like 2012, 2013. So you can probably find it fairly cheap now because it's an older comic book series. But it's just like Dr. Robotnik and Dr. Wily, they kind of team up, and then Sonic and Mega Man kind of team up. And just to see those two worlds kind of cross over was pretty cool.
You know what? I'm going to jump on your Archie bandwagon. The artist for the Man Without Fear arc, Francisco Francavilla, or Villa. Again, I'm butchering his name. But I think Will Harris put in the comments earlier when we first started, he drew an arc or a series called Afterlife with Archie. It's a zombie apocalypse hits Riverdale. And his artwork is very kind of creepy and very suited to the tale. There's a lot of death and destruction, which you don't think of when you think about Archie, but it's definitely not a mature readers, but it's definitely it's meant for older readers. But it's basically Archie in a zombie apocalypse, and bad things happen to a lot of fan favorite characters.
That sounds like a fun read. I feel like Archie comics are a little bit slept on. Very much when you're passing through Emporia, you go to that Burger King / Stuckey's. I remember taking the trip there as kids and just spinning the wheel and picking out like different Archie comics. They were mostly Sonic, but I did read a few of the other Archie. So like Archie comics is basically like the basis that I have for like being a comic book reader.
And I think this will be the topic of probably an episode on its own. But when I'm feeling a little bit down, or when life is just kind of piling on, and if I'm at the grocery store, I will still to this day pick up an Archie digest, at the counter at the checkout counter, and one or two of those to bring home just to read. They're kind of like they're little mental pick-me-ups for me. Kind of takes me back to a better time.
Yeah, it does. It kind of brings, because I remember, going to the grocery store with your mom, and she getting food for the whole family for like the whole month. And so there's like 2-3 carts. And while it's all being rang up, you just grab the Archie's digest and flip through it while the groceries being rang up.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely know exactly what you're talking about.
For me, I would try to sneak one in while it's being rung up, because my mom was the same thing. You got a once a month type grocery shopping. So she's not going to notice a $1.99 comic book, and the 15 other bags of groceries that we have. Jabbar, anything you would want to recommend to us to check out, or to the viewers?
I think I already suggested that most recent one, the Black Panther. Yep, Black Panther, a nation under our feet. Definitely a must read, and y'all already on your pass for the Black Panther collection. So pretty much squared away on my hand. Oh, and if you get Black Panther Volume 1, it has a story with the Marvel's new sensation, Monica Rambeau, or Monica Rambeau. I also got some stories to mingle in with
yes.
Black Panther. Yeah. So if you get to that Volume 1, you'll be really excited.
Actually, to piggyback off of what you said, I'm about to drop a small spoiler about the MCU, so please, I'm giving you a little bit of warning. Go ahead, cut the stream off. I don't want to drop your viewers. Monica Rambeau has actually made an appearance in WandaVision, so I've enjoyed watching her character development.
And there is rumor that the big bad is Mephisto from the Christopher Priest. The devil is the big bad of WandaVision too. So
which, when I looked up who the character revealed was on the latest episode, when I looked up who this character was, because like I've never heard this character, I was like, this character does have connections to Mephisto. So I was just like, oh, I think I know where this is going. But they could, because that show been throwing me for a loop, every single episode I've been watching. So
every single Friday.
Oh yeah, I'm ready for tomorrow.
Yeah, I am too. So Jordan, where can people find you? You have any online shows coming up?
Yes, absolutely. So tomorrow, I'm going to be part of a special improv riot that is going to be raising funds for Texas, because we know they've been facing some hardships. So that'll be fun. I'm also going to plug Lemon Pepper and Sasson. We are doing a Black History Month show Saturday at 8. So please follow us, Lemon Pepper and Sasson Comedy on Facebook, so you can see that. It's gonna be called Lift Every Voice in Improv. We have some fun improv and sketches to do there. Lemon Pepper and Sasson, and I know we've been promising it for a while, and I'm starting to feel like Rihanna in this album. We are going to drop a podcast entitled Disaster. We have a few episodes that we are going to start releasing very, very soon.
Very awesome. And as always, I want to say a big thank you to Matt Cole, the man behind the technical wizardry here at the Funny Pages. He is the brains behind Earprov, which you every Friday and Saturday night check out earprov.com or Earprov on Facebook, or the Push Comedy Theater Facebook page, to see all the digital content we have for you over the weekends. The Push Comedy Theater, we have some live shows that are going to be coming in March. If you were in the North area, live outdoor comedy is coming to the Push Comedy Theater in March. And we also have the World Series of Improv. It's going to be a nationwide improv competition that you can watch on Facebook, and that'll be coming at the end of March. More details on both of those projects will be announced tomorrow. Actually, tomorrow is our big official announcement day, so stay tuned for that. And then next week on the Funny Pages, we are talking about hard traveling comics. As opposed to talking about a specific hero or book, my guest is going to be Patrick C. Taylor, and we're going to be talking about comic books we picked up while we were on the road, traveling to visit aunts and uncles and relatives, or in Patrick's case, when he was traveling abroad in Europe. Comic books that we picked up just to kind of pass the time when you're in the back seat of a car. So stay tuned for that. That'll be next Thursday at 9:00. Jordan, once again, thank you so much for talking Black Panther with me.
Thank you for having me. And thank you, Jamarcus, for coming on and giving us some good talking points.
Agreed. Yes, Jamarcus, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And again, guys, thank you very much. Check us out next week on the Funny Pages. And till then, have a good week.